ABC, Rick Mandler. And from USA Network, Jesse Redness. With Hill Holliday's John Dukakis.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. I feel duty-bound to thank Karen Kaplan for revealing a part of my life which I had safely kept hidden for many years. And I do want to point out that although she said it was a forgettable episode, our social media engagement rates were through the roof when it aired in 1982. So it, wasn't that forgettable.
And you're still getting royalties.
Yeah, I hope I'm getting a big residual after today. But we're talking about internet TV and specifically the threat that the linear networks are under. This is a quote: "Netflix now commands more daily attention than any cable channel in the United States." Not even going to ask if that's true. I would imagine that that's somewhat hyperbolic. But the Netflix CEO the other day pretty much declared war on linear TV, saying that he thinks it's going to be irrelevant at some point in the near future. Are you quaking in your boots about this? What do you think of that contention?
I think Netflix and internet TV certainly is a challenge for more established television outlets. First of all, I sort of reject the premise of internet TV. To me, it's all TV, right? Whether it's on an iPad or whether it's on a laptop or whether it's on a phone, it's all television. So the distinctions sort of blur. But and there's no question, the more opportunities there are for viewing, the more the available audience gets sliced up into little pieces, and that's a challenge for the people who have the larger audiences because they have the most to lose. So I don't dismiss out of hand what Reed Hastings is saying. On the other hand, his product is not ad-supported, and he's been vociferous in his claims that it will not be ad-supported.
Do you doubt that?
Well, sort of giving up one of the dual revenue stream model seems to work really well in cable. I don't know why he would just give it up, but it's his candy store. And so in some sense, while we're competing for eyeballs, we're not competing for advertisers. And to me, the larger concern isn't so much as that he's going to command some more attention and pull eyeballs away from us, as the most valuable pieces of our audience, the people who can afford to pay not to watch commercials, may be siphoned off. That to me is the larger concern.
Sure.
Yeah, I also view it as opportunity for us to expand into that realm as well. An interesting quote coming from him, but at the same time, it's what is the content that's being consumed that constitutes that time period? Is it kids programming? Because I know I've got two little kids at home. They command my Netflix library right now. So you've got to look at the power of the platform, and decades from now, everything is digital. It's being delivered in a 1 and a 0. So we are in the ITV, internet TV space already.
It's interesting. I found a quote from somebody not usually associated with sweeping philosophical media-related quotes, who said, "Creativity expands when distribution expands." And that was, of course, Eva Longoria, who is
clearly a visionary in many ways.
Very definitely. And in fact is producing a new show for, I believe, for Netflix. But do you think, it seems like everyone can win this. There does not have to be a defined winner and loser in this, and that the beneficiary at the end of the day is going to be the consumer.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think that's right too.
Because if you look at sort of the history of let's just stick with video for a second, right? So you had 3 broadcast networks for a while, and then cable came on, and a lot of what was on cable was repurposed broadcast programming. The same way a lot of what was on the original television networks was repurposed radio.
Right.
Right? And then original content started coming to cable, And I think we're seeing the same patterns. You're seeing more and more outlets for digital distribution, IP video, and you're starting to see original content come to it. So yes, broadcast networks are still in business, notwithstanding that there's hundreds of cable channels, and I think the cable channels will still be in business, notwithstanding that there are going to be thousands and thousands of internet video outlets. Doesn't mean you don't have to adapt, you do, but at the end of the day, those changes happen more slowly as a business than I think we in the business tend to understand, right? So today, Netflix is producing what? I don't know. So let's be generous and say 100 episodes of original content this year, right? So ABC is going to produce thousands of episodes of original content. I mean, every day between the daytime and news, Jimmy Kimmel and Nightline, we're producing tremendous amounts of original content. Not to mention what's happening in Prime. So I think there's clearly some rebalancing that's going to happen, but for these IPTV services to get up to the point where they're producing thousands of hours of original content is a long way to go.
Yeah, and the way that they're releasing it as well is very interesting. It's there's a lot to be said about the power of people and the power of fandom and driving people to, as Deb was saying earlier, to that shared moment in time. When you release a series and you release it all at once, so it's an all-you-can-eat whenever you want to eat it, you're not able to have that multiplying effect of people talking about that episode the next day or in real time on Twitter or Facebook or what have you, to help you realize the experience that you just saw. It's that like, oh my God, did you see that effect that you're not getting, sorry. Yeah, see? Like, whoa. But you're not gonna get that with some of the programming. And I think it's really interesting to see their data and science approach with their algorithms and how they're creating content versus the way that some of us have been doing it for years. And there's a convergence happening. And I think it's gonna be really smart to look at both ways. But how do you really drive the power of what a piece of content can really do just by releasing it out into the wild and never really understanding how you get people to come back every single week? How do you launch a new series next year by trying to get all those, herding cats, getting them all back into the same spot to tune back in again?
So you're not predicting great success for the second season of House of Cards?
It's a great show. I mean, I saw it and I really loved it, but at the same time, I couldn't really talk to anybody about it because I wanted to watch it up front. And most people I wanted to talk to were like, oh, I haven't seen it yet, can't talk about it. And I'm like, well, who can I share this moment with right now? You could go on Twitter and basically ruin it for all of the people that are following you or Facebook. And you get to a point where, as a marketer, as a content creator, you've got to figure out how you're going to get people back into that launch mode again. How do you activate that fan base again to crave it? Because they're going to forget about it.
So I think that's a really important point. So Deb had a slide where he showed one was a viewership curve that spread out over time, and the other was a viewership curve that was constrained to a very narrow window of time. And he said, I hope you all think that the one that's constrained to a very, very narrow window of time has intuitively more value. And I think that's right, it does. And if you think about what are the events that have the highest the highest unit cost and the highest CPM, right? They're the events that have the largest contemporaneous audience, like the Super Bowl or the Academy Awards. And the reason they do is because there's, to borrow Deb's formula, there's more acceleration around that high contemporaneous audience because people talk about it, right? It becomes a common social currency for them in a very narrow window of time, and they talk about it, and the value of an advertiser to be part of that conversation is exponentially greater. And that's why they're willing to pay more, because of that greater value that they're receiving back. And as we move to an on-demand world, we run the risk of losing that ability to drive social conversation, to take advantage of large contemporaneous audiences. And those properties that do drive large contemporaneous audiences will I think, be that much more valuable.
So we were talking backstage about the fact that you were both involved in kind of the early days and maybe the last days for a while of ITV.
Version 1.0.
Yeah, right. What lessons did you learn from that inform how you view television today?
I think one of them was we wasted a lot of money up front when people weren't really ready for it yet. The platforms weren't there. I think now that everyone has one, maybe two, maybe three devices that are constantly connected, gives us the hope that the real opportunity is right in front of us, as well as the content. I mean, I think that every content producer now is looking at all the different screens and how they work together to create a total experience. I think the marketplace is going to be ripe for it and is ripe for it right now. And Netflix and DirecTV with their audience network and Dish. I mean, everyone is now getting into the content development game for those screens. There is going to be opportunity for many players to come into the space, and it's all about how you figure out how to get those fans and viewers to activate there.
So I don't disagree with anything Jesse just said, but I'm a little bit more of a skeptic on this. We saw earlier a stat, I think it was 77 or 78% of the people who are using a second screen are doing something that's unrelated to the programming. So that's something that they're doing naturally. And for second screen programming to work, you have to redirect them from something they're doing naturally to something unnatural, something that you want them to do, not that they want to do. And that's really hard. It requires great content, which is expensive, and it requires large amounts of promotion, which is also expensive. When I was doing second screen 1.0, ABC's Enhanced TV, right, I would go to the people who manage promotion at the network and I would say, hey, we really need a scheduled promotion to make this product work. And they would say, well, the average unit cost on ABC is, I'll make up a number, is $100,000. So you want 10, 15-second promotions. How much revenue are you going to generate from that? And then I would sort of slink away, right? Because there was no way I could make those economics work. And I think that's really part of the challenge, which is, okay, great original content and great promotion is expensive. Again, and you're taking all that and putting it against people who are doing something else and asking them to redirect. So that's very challenging.
Yeah, but I think that with great content, as you said, when you do that and actually make the investment, you can make it work.
The engagement is going to be off the charts, right? And that's the nugget of the opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, even from your own network, I mean, you're already seeing it. We're seeing it definitely at USA when we're creating content in one of our great shows, Psych, in which we create synced second screen experiences all the time, and ancillary story narrative. We're activating a few 100,000 fans to come in and consume that content. Mm-hmm. The power of that activated fan base is getting a multiplying effect overall. And it's worth it right now to make that investment to experiment to see how it's actually triggering that engagement touch point. Because right now, when you've got advertisers buying media now, everyone knows basically the banner is just something that people don't pay attention to anymore. So how are you really going to drive people's attention, drive that engagement? So creating content that's going to ask them to basically pay attention to something is really important. I think right now you can hold about 7 different things in active memory. So while you're multitasking, you can switch back and forth really quickly. Mm-hmm. When you're multitasking, you're not actually doing 2 things at once. You're doing one, but switching really quickly. So how do we give them, say, a great piece of content to want to engage with that you're going to forget about, dinner that's cooking in the oven, so you're going to burn it, so that you can engage with the show content that you've created on the second screen, whether it be on Facebook or Tumblr or Vine or Twitter or our own core platforms. And when you've got a great call to action, and yes, it's expensive, but when you've got a great call to action from air, tying people onto that second screen to engage, then you see the magic happen.
Well, so again, I completely agree. I think it's worth experimenting. I'm a little bit of a cynic, because I find it hard. For certain kinds of programming, it makes a ton of sense, sports especially, right? But transferring those thousands into millions for the scripted programming, which drives a very large chunk of the viewing and which is the most valuable context for an advertiser to have their message in, so that you have scale for an advertiser to support that second screen, that seems like a tough putt to me.
Do we have time for Twitter? One Twitter question. So there's a question about how do you reconcile the dual trends of asynchronous, I said that right, didn't I? Okay. TV viewing and the contemporaneous is better. I was an actor, but I can't say words sometimes. Contemporaneous is better aspect of social TV. You seem to have been discussing that a little, but.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a couple different ways to approach it. Obviously, for the world in which we live in now, the Nielsen number is really important, the Nielsen Live number. Again, activating the largest possible fan base is going to happen with that synchronous experience when the show is live. But we're also, and I think almost every single network now is basically building these experiences so that you can watch at a later time, whether it's using ACR. Eventually, we're going to be using eBIF. So that if you're on a Samsung device and you've got a Samsung TV, they're just automatically going to talk to each other. So I think it's all about lining up the content experience and providing it there for whenever the fan really wants to engage with it. For us, we want to promote people to engage with this live because that's the end goal that we have. But from ABC's side,
Well, first of all, eBIF are 4 letters that I thought I would never hear again at a conference. So that's a first right there. I break it up a little differently. Synchronous and asynchronous, there are sort of 2 fundamental tracks for social TV, right? One is to either carry, the viewership track, right? To carry people through to a broadcast and then through a broadcast, right? So asynchronous would be to a broadcast, synchronous would be through a broadcast. But then the second thing is, all right, can you provide ways for people to engage more actively with the brand of the show and with the brands of the sponsors? And that's a whole nother separate bucket of value, again, which breaks out into asynchronous and synchronous. The distinction at some level to me doesn't make much of a difference.
but they're used for different things, though.
Well, do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, you can basically do storytelling experiences that are not in synchronous with the show while you're watching it. So basically bridging people from
We're going to have to take this outside.
Nah.
All right, thank you very much for being here today.
That's good.
Thanks.